All right, hey guys, welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about some comparing fractions and just looking at fractions in different ways. We're going to do some adding of fractions or some subtracting of fractions and just looking at them to decide how they relate to each other. So the very first one that we're going to talk about is a fourth. And you can see I have this chart up behind me and I kind of have some of them covered. But you can notice in the back that there is a geoboard. And what you see with that geoboard is that 1/4 of it is the fraction that's filled in. So if we split it into 4 sections, you would notice that the big square on the top was one of those 4 sections that we split it into. All right, and how can we have the same kind of fraction, the same amount, but have an equivalent fraction or show it in a different way? So one way that we can do that with using our fourths is moving to eighths. And so I know there's a little bit of glare on the chart, but I'll move you closer in just a second. One way that I can show an equivalent fraction for 1/4 is by separating my grid into 8 sections instead. The thing with this is that instead of it being 1/4, it would actually be 2/8. So I now, instead of 4 boxes that I could have, I have 8 different boxes total, and I have 2 of them filled in, giving me a fraction of 2/8. So I'll write that down for you too. So I have 1/4 over here, and then I have 2/8, which actually, if you look at it, they equal the same amount. They're both taking up the same amount of that whole, right? Remember, our geoboard equals that whole, right? And then the last one, or not the last one, you can make a bunch with this, but another one that we're gonna look at is 16ths, right? 16ths, so instead of now 4 sections to 8 sections total, to 16 sections, right? You'll notice there's still the same amount taken up in that grid, but now it's out of 16 different sections, right? Which is going to still equal a fourth, but it's going to be written as 4/16. And if you watched our video from session 2 yesterday, you saw that that was one that we talked about as well, how we got from adding 4 1/16 to get to 4/16, which actually equaled the same as 1/4 because they're equivalent fractions. All right, some others that we're going to talk about is now for halves. Right, as we move down the line, you can see that we've separated this into just 2 boxes. All right, one side's red, the other side's left blank because half of it is filled in as our fraction for that one. 1/2. Right, but how can we represent that with fourths? Think for a second. What might you think in your head would be the same as a half, but out of 4 sections instead of just 2. All right, hopefully you came to the consensus that it is 2/4. 2/4 would be equal to 1/2. All right, next we're working down the line to eighths, and out of 8 total sections that we have filled in, yes, it would be 4/8. All right, 4 out of those eighths, or out of the 8. And then our last one, we're down to 16ths. If I have 16ths, I want an equivalent fraction for half. If you notice these, it's 1 out of 2. 1 is half of 2. 2 is half of 4. 4 is half of 8. All of these equal a half. Our last one, you got it, 8/16. There's 16 total boxes and 8 are filled in. All right, and all of these, hopefully you're still remembering that the same amount is filled in each one. We're not adding any more, adding any less. It's just how many parts of that whole that we're talking about. So first we had 2 parts to the whole. Then we ended up with 16 total parts to the whole and 8 being filled in. All right, the last one, we have how many? 4 boxes, looking at fourths. All right, and we have 3 out of those 4 filled in. So if we have 3/4, we would move that to eighths. You might see that there are 6/8 filled in. All right, and not last, or it is last, but not least, we have the 16th grid. If we were to count all of those up, we would have 12 out of 16. So again, all of these equaling the same amounts, just a different way to represent it. All of them are equivalent fractions, meaning the same part of that whole is filled, right? And you might notice some patterns, hopefully, with these, right? You'll notice that as we go across, right, well, it's doubling, right? Double 1, you get 2. You double 2, you get 4, right? You double 2, you get 4, like we just said, and you double 4, you get 8. So they're staying equivalent. The same amount of that whole is still filled in. So this is our main job today, is really looking at fractions and parts of a whole and how they can be represented. They can be worth the same amount, but just looked at differently or named different, called different things, as we've been talking about this week. All right, so we have a couple problems on workbook page 101 and 102 that we're going to go over a little bit. I'm going to help you solve one of each of those. You have a little bit of comparing, you have some adding, and then some subtracting as well. So if you flip over to that page, you might want to pause me until you get there. But your first problem will look something like this. We have 3/8 compared to 2/8. Right? It's so nice when they have these common denominators, right? 8 and 8 are both of my denominators to help me know that I can compare these because they have the same denominator. So hopefully if we look at these, we'd say, okay, out of 8 total sections, 3 are filled in over here, or 2 are filled in over here. Which one is going to be bigger than? Remember, the mouth always wants to eat the bigger number. So you would end up with something like that. Because 3/8 is greater than 2/8. Okay? So you have a couple more of those to practice there. Maybe you want to pause me, but I'm going to go on to the next section, which is adding. Sorry about that. Hold on one second.
Can you please call the front office? Joe, call the front office.
All right. Now to our adding of fractions. The first one you will see there is 1/4 plus 3/4 equals. Right? When they have those common denominators, as we talked about previously, it's nice because you can just add straight across. Right? So I know that 1 plus 3 is 4. So I would add there. The next thing, when you're adding fractions, you don't have to do anything to the bottom. You just leave it alone and copy it straight over. So I would have 4 out of 4. 4 sections are filled in out of 4 sections, which actually is equal to 1 whole. That whole grid would be filled in. All right, so you have a couple more there to practice as well. Let's move on to our last practice problem for the day. We have 3/4. Now in that bottom section, we're subtracting. Minus 1/4 equals. Same thing with these. Adding and subtracting fractions are nice and easy because all I have to do is worry about the top row as long as my bottom row has the same denominator. I have a 4, so I just take 3. I subtract 1 from it, and I would get 2. I copy my denominator over, which would be 4 still. Right? So 2/4 would be my answer. But I also, if I'm feeling real tricky, I know that 2/4 can reduce, or I can make that a little bit smaller because 2/4 is also in reduced form equal to 1/2, as we saw in our chart earlier. So that is also, I'll write it down here in this corner, equal to 1/2. Because I know 2/4 is the same thing as 1/2. All right, good luck today, guys. Get that practice in.